I'm Mitchell, 28, the black sheep of my wealthy Boston family. While my siblings collected Ivy League degrees and parental praise, I secretly built a healthcare tech company from nothing. Tonight was our annual family dinner, the dreaded gathering where my life choices would be dissected and dismissed. I never imagined my phone would ring at the perfect moment, transforming years of belittlement into shocked silence. Sometimes, life's sweetest victories come when you've stopped seeking approval. Before I tell you how my family tried to cut me off right before learning I was worth millions, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe. You'll want to see what happens when success becomes the ultimate revenge. Growing up in Brookline, Massachusetts, in a sprawling colonial home with manicured gardens, I was surrounded by success and expectations. The Mitchell name carried weight in Boston's financial circles, thanks to my father, Thomas, a stern, calculating investment banker who measured worth in dollars and prestigious connections. His career at Goldman Sachs spanned 3 decades, and his portfolio was as impressive as his inability to show affection. My mother, Eleanor, was the perfect complement to him, a Wellesley graduate who traded career ambitions for charity galas and country club memberships. Her social calendar was her religion, and appearances meant everything when introducing her children to Boston society. She'd beam with pride over my siblings while finding subtle ways to minimize my existence. Then there was James, my older brother by 4 years, the golden child, the heir apparent. By 30, he was already a vice president at my father's firm, with the right connections, the right haircut, and the right fiancé from the right family. His Harvard MBA hung in my father's study, not his own apartment, as if his achievement belonged to our father. Perhaps it did. Madison, 2 years younger than me, was the family princess. She had my mother's charm and my father's cunning, a combination that made her the perfect political spouse in training. While she completed her law degree at Harvard, her blonde hair was always styled, her smile always perfect, her achievements always celebrated with dinner parties and announcements in the Boston Globe Societe. White pages. And then there was me, Kara, the middle child, the question mark. From an early age, I was different. While Madison played with dolls and James counted his allowance, I was disassembling computers and putting them back together. By 12, I taught myself basic coding through online tutorials, spending hours in my room creating simple programs while my parents worried about my antisocial tendencies. Computers are for boys who can't play sports, my father once said when he found me coding at 2am on a school night, and it's certainly no career for a Mitchell woman. My mother's concern was more about appearances. Darling, your posture will suffer. And those screens will ruin your complexion. How will you find a suitable husband? High school was no better. I attended Phillips Academy, where I excelled in math, physics, and computer science. My parents attended exactly one science fair when James needed a ride to a lacrosse game at a neighboring school. My robotics team won nationals, but my parents were in Aspen that weekend. Madison's debate tournament wins warranted family dinners at Mistral. My perfect SAT math score earned a distracted, "That's nice, dear." When college applications came around, my parents had my future mapped out: Wharton undergraduate, then Harvard Business School, followed by a suitable position at a consulting firm until marriage. I applied to MIT instead, engineering. My father laughed when I told them my plans. That's not a Mitchell field. That's for the people who work for people like us. I still remember my mother's horrified expression. But all your friends are going to Princeton and Yale. Who will you meet at MIT? Despite their protests, I went to MIT with a partial scholarship. They could have paid my full tuition easily, but my father called it learning financial responsibility. I worked part-time jobs throughout college while maintaining a 4.0 GPA. My graduation ceremony was attended by Aunt Patricia, my father's sister, and the only family member who ever encouraged my interests. My parents and siblings were in Martha's Vineyard that weekend for Madison's engagement party. My first job after college was at a healthcare startup in Cambridge, making $65,000 a year, a pittance compared to James's 6-figure starting salary. At family gatherings, this became ammunition. Kara is still finding herself. My mother would explain to friends, as if I were backpacking through Europe instead of working 60-hour weeks learning the industry. All that education for a secretary's salary, my father would joke at Thanksgiving. Madison was particularly skilled at the backhanded compliment, "It's so brave how you don't care about money or status." Kara, I could never be that free-spirited. For years, I endured these comments while observing, learning, and planning. The startup world was teaching me things my family would never understand. That failure was valuable, that hierarchies could be disrupted, that money was just one form of currency, and, most importantly, that I had ideas worth pursuing, whether the Mitchell family approved or not. 2 years ago, while working at the Cambridge startup, I noticed something that changed everything. Patients with chronic conditions were struggling to get timely specialist consultations, often waiting months for appointments while their conditions worsened. Meanwhile, specialist schedules had inefficiencies that could be solved with the right technology. The healthcare system was operating like it was still 1995 while patients were suffering. The idea for Secure Health came to me during a 3A.M coding session in my tiny Somerville apartment, a HIPAA-compliant platform that could securely connect patients with specialists remotely. Using AI to optimize scheduling and matching based on symptoms, urgency, and availability, it would include secure video conferencing, medical record sharing, and prescription management all in one platform. I withdrew $50,000 from my savings, every penny I'd managed to squirrel away while paying Boston rent and student loans. It was enough to build a prototype and create a business plan. For 6 months, I worked my day job and built Secure Health at night, surviving on coffee and determination. The first major challenge came when seeking initial investment. Male investors would listen politely, then ask if I had a technical co-founder, meaning a man. Healthcare is complicated, one told me condescendingly, as if I hadn't spent years researching the field. Another suggested I find a seasoned CEO and take a CTO position instead. You're clearly bright, he said, but investors need confidence. I pitched to 37 potential investors before finding one who saw the potential. Jessica Barnes, a former healthcare executive turned angel investor, gave me $200,000 in seed funding, enough to quit my job and hire 3 people, a back-end developer, a UI/UX designer, and Alicia Thompson. Alicia was initially hired as an administrative assistant but quickly became much more. With a background in healthcare administration and a fierce work ethic that matched my own, she understood my vision immediately. This isn't just software, she said during her interview. This is going to change lives. Within months, she was effectively my coup, though we couldn't afford fancy titles yet. Our first office was a converted storage room in a Cambridge co-working space. We worked 7 days a week, often past midnight. When the air conditioning broke during a July heat wave, we coded in our underwear with bags of frozen peas as cooling packs. When we couldn't afford furniture, we sat on cushions and used cardboard boxes as desks. The breakthrough came 9 months in when Massachusetts General Hospital agreed to pilot Secure Health in their neurology department. Their patient satisfaction scores increased by 42%. Wait times decreased by 68%, and specialist utilization improved by 33%. We had data now, real, impressive numbers that told our story better than I ever could. More hospitals signed on, revenues started flowing. We moved to a real office in Kendall Square and expanded to 15 employees. Series of funding came through for $0.5 million. That allowed us to scale nationally. Then Series B, a year later, $28 million at a $65 million valuation. Through it all, I told my family nothing. After years of dismissal, I'd stopped sharing my professional life with them. They thought I still worked at the original startup, perhaps with a modest promotion. I invented a fake 1-bedroom apartment when they asked about my living situation. Though I'd actually purchased a loft in South Boston, I drove my old Honda Civic to family gatherings, leaving my new Tesla in the garage. This secrecy wasn't just about surprising them eventually. It was self-protection. I couldn't bear their dismissal of this thing I was pouring my soul into, and as success came, I realized I wanted to prove something, not just to them, but to myself, that I could do this without their connections, their money, their approval. In the weeks before that fateful family dinner, Secure Health had been preparing for its initial public offering. Goldman Sachs, ironically my father's employer, was leading our IPO, with early valuation discussions centering around $100 million. We had expanded to 112 employees across 3 offices. With contracts at 230 hospitals nationwide, the Wall Street Journal had profiled me as one of 30. Under 30 inches changing healthcare, though I'd managed to keep the article from my family's attention. The night before the dinner, Alicia and I had been on calls with international investors until 2 a.m. and major news was brewing. Japanese investment firm SoftBank was considering a significant pre-IPO a decision that would potentially push our valuation even higher. As I selected a deliberately modest outfit for the family dinner, a simple black dress from Banana Republic rather than the Chanel I could now afford, I wondered if tonight might finally be the night to reveal my secret success. Little did I know, my family had plans of their own. The Mitchell family estate in Brookline looked the same as always imposing and immaculate. The colonial-style mansion, with its white columns and manicured hedges, was featured in Architectural Digest the year I turned 16, the same year I won the State Mathematics Olympiad. An achievement that went unmentioned at dinner that night. I parked my old Honda at the end of the circular driveway, behind James's Porsche Cayenne and Madison's Range Rover. Taking a deep breath, I checked that my phone was on vibrate. Alicia knew not to call unless it was truly urgent, and prepared myself for the annual performance of being the family disappointment. The heavy front door opened before I could knock, revealing Margot. My parents' housekeeper of 20 years, Miss Kara, she said with a genuine smile. The first I'd receive all evening. It's so good to see you. You too, Margot, I replied, handing her the bottle of wine I'd brought, a $30 Cabernet rather than the $300 bottles now in my own collection. Is everyone here already? Yes, in the solarium for drinks. Your brother is sharing news about his promotion. Of course he was. I smoothed my dress, plastered on a smile, and headed toward the familiar sound of crystal glasses clinking and polite laughter. The solarium, a grand room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the garden, was my mother's pride and joy tonight. It was filled with the usual suspects, my father holding court by the fireplace, my mother arranging canapes with surgical precision, James gesturing animatedly while Madison nodded with practiced interest. The surprise addition was Aunt Patricia, my father's sister and secret ally, who rarely attended these gatherings due to her bohemian lifestyle. She was a literature professor who wore colorful scarves and had divorced twice. Kara, you finally made it, my mother announced, making it sound as if I were hours late rather than precisely on time. Eleanor Mitchell, at 58, looked a decade younger, thanks to discreet cosmetic procedures and a religious skincare regimen. Her blonde bob was perfectly styled, her navy dress likely purchased that week from Neiman Marcus. Hello, Mother, I said, accepting her air kiss. The traffic from Cambridge was terrible. You really should consider moving closer to the family, she replied, a conversation opener she'd been deploying for years. There are beautiful apartments in the Back Bay. It would be much more convenient. Before I could answer, my father's loud voice interrupted. There she is. Thomas Mitchell, his courtesy always wrapped in performative cheer, raised his tumbler of scotch in my direction but didn't move to embrace me. Hi, Dad, I said, crossing to kiss his cheek. Still at that little startup? He asked, though he knew perfectly well where I supposedly worked. It was his way of establishing that my career wasn't worth remembering the details of. Something like that, I replied vaguely. James swooped in next, reeking of expensive cologne and privilege. At 32, he was my father's mini-me, down to the Rolex and the slightly too firm handshake. Baby sister, he said, taking a dramatic sip of his martini. Just telling everyone about my new division. 14 people reporting to me now and a corner office with a view of the harbor. But hey, I'm sure clicking buttons or whatever you do is rewarding too. Madison completed the welcome gauntlet, looking like she'd stepped out of EJ Crew catalog in a pink sheath dress and pearls. Her Yale-educated fiancé, Brian, was thankfully absent tonight. His supercilious explanations of basic concepts made James seem humble by comparison. Kara, you look comfortable, she said, eyeing my simple dress, very appropriate for someone in your position. The only genuine greeting came from Aunt Patricia, who crossed the room to give me a warm hug at 63. Patricia Mitchell was everything my father was not, warm, curious, and blissfully unconcerned with social hierarchies. Her academic career studying feminist literature had made her the family's black sheep long before I claimed the title. Ignore them all, she whispered in my ear. How are you really? Surviving, I whispered back, grateful for her presence. The pre-dinner ritual continued, with my mother distributing drinks, white wine for the women, scotch for the men as if we were in a 1950s sitcom. While my father interrogated James about market forecasts, Madison monopolized conversation with details of her wedding planning, describing her custom Vera Wang dress and the difficulty of limiting the guest list to 300. The governor can only attend the reception, not the ceremony, she lamented. As if this were a genuine hardship, I sipped my wine and nodded at appropriate intervals, wondering what my family would think if they knew I'd had dinner with two senators last month to discuss healthcare innovation policy, or that the clicking buttons James mocked had created technology now used in hospitals across the country. Dinner is served, announced Margot, providing blessed relief from the small talk. The Mitchell dining room was designed to intimidate. A long mahogany table beneath a crystal chandelier, with ancestral portraits lining the walls. Family legend claimed one of the dark-faced men in oil paint had been an advisor to Calvin Coolidge, a connection my father mentioned whenever possible. We took our assigned seats, parents at opposite ends, James and Madison on one side, me and Aunt Patricia on the other. The seating arrangement had been the same since childhood, though the empty chair next to me had once belonged to my grandfather before his passing. I've asked Margot to prepare something special tonight, my mother announced as the first course arrived, a lobster bisque that probably cost more than what most people spend on dinner for a week. We're celebrating so many wonderful developments in the family. She raised her glass to James's promotion, to Madison's wedding plans, and to she faltered, clearly struggling to find something to celebrate about me, to family togetherness. The annual tradition of updates began as we ate. A Mitchell family ritual where each person shared their recent accomplishments. It was as much a competition as it was a conversation, with my parents scoring each contribution through subtle nods or frowns. James led with details of his promotion, the bonus structure, and how his team had handled a particularly complex merger. My mother asked follow-up questions, designed to highlight his achievements further. And they selected you over how many other candidates, darling? Madison followed with wedding updates, seamlessly transitioning to her law school accomplishments and her fiancé Brian's political connect. Ians, his mentor, thinks he could run for state senate before he's 40. She added with practiced modesty. As the main course arrived, roast duck with seasonal vegetables, all eyes turned to me. And what about you, Kara? My father asked, his tone suggesting he expected little. Anything new with your computer job? I felt the familiar tightening in my chest, the urge to reveal everything, battling with years of protective secrecy. This was the moment I'd both dreaded and anticipated for years. Actually, I began carefully. The healthcare app I've been working on is doing well. We've expanded to several hospitals and, that's nice, dear, my mother interrupted, clearly finding the topic uninteresting. James, tell everyone about the new summer house you're looking at in Nantucket. And just like that, I was dismissed again. James launched into a detailed description of waterfront properties while I pushed duck around my plate, wondering why I still allowed these dynamics to hurt me after all these years. Aunt Patricia caught my eye across the table and gave me a small, encouraging smile. She alone seemed to sense that I was holding something back. Little did any of them know, the real drama of the evening was yet to begin. As Margot cleared the main course dishes, my father cleared his throat, the Mitchell's signal for an important announcement. The table fell silent immediately. Even Madison paused her monologue about wedding flowers. Your mother and I have been doing some estate planning, he began, swirling the remaining scotch in his glass, with James's career advancement and Madison's upcoming nuptials. It seemed an appropriate time to revisit the family's financial arrangements. My mother nodded, with rehearsed solemnity. This clearly wasn't a spontaneous discussion, as you know, my father continued. The Mitchell name carries certain expectations. We've always emphasized making choices that honor the family legacy and contribute to its continued prosperity. I felt a familiar knot form in my stomach. Whenever my father spoke about family legacy, it was inevitably followed by criticism of my life choices. James will be taking over as the trustee of the family's main investment portfolio next year, he announced, nodding proudly at my brother, and following Madison's wedding, we'll be gifting her and Brian the Cape Cod property to give them a proper start. It's the logical choice, Madison added unnecessarily. Brian's political aspiration will benefit from a family home with historical significance. My father turned to me then, his expression shifting from pride to something more clinical. Which brings us to you, Kara. I sat straighter, feeling the air in the room change. Aunt Patricia's hand found mine under the table and squeezed gently. Your mother and I have given this considerable thought, he continued, and while we've supported your unconventional choices for some time, we've come to a decision. My mother set down her wine glass with deliberate precision. We're cutting you off completely, she announced, as if commenting on the weather, effective immediately. The words hung in the air, though I hadn't relied on family money since college. The finality of the statement and the public way it was delivered felt like a slap. The annual allowance. Any future inheritance considerations, access to the family vacation properties, all of it, my father elaborated. Until you demonstrate more appropriate choices befitting a Mitchell. Appropriate choices, I repeated, finding my voice. You mean abandoning my career for something you approve of? Don't be dramatic, Kara, Madison interjected. They just want what's best for you. You're wasting your potential at that little tech job. James nodded in agreement. The family has a reputation to maintain. Your choices reflect on all of us. I looked around the table, taking in their expressions, my father's stern disapproval, my mother's practiced concern, Madison's poorly concealed satisfaction, and James's paternalistic disappointment. Only Aunt Patricia looked genuinely distressed on my behalf. What exactly do you expect me to do? I asked, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Quit my job. Go back to business school. Marry someone from your approved list. Don't take that tone, my mother warned. We're trying to help you course correct before it's too late. 30 is approaching quickly, and you have nothing substantial to show for yourself. The irony of her statement might have made me laugh if it weren't so painful. You've had ample time to establish yourself, my father added, yet you insist on this healthcare software gimmick that's going nowhere. It's time for adult decisions, Kara. The Mitchell Trust is meant to support family members who contribute to the family standing, James explained, as if I were a child. Your computer hobby doesn't qualify. It's not a hobby, I said quietly. It's a company. My company, a company, Madison scoffed. Please, you work for a startup that will probably fold next year like most of them do. You've always had creative tendencies, my mother said dismissively. But real businesses require business acumen, dear. Something you've actively rejected by avoiding proper business education, my father leaned forward. This isn't a punishment, Kara, it's motivation. Sometimes people need to face consequences before they make better choices. The condescension was so thick I could barely breathe. For years, I'd hidden my success partly out of self-protection and partly waiting for the perfect moment. I hadn't expected it to arrive like this. Served alongside dessert at a family dinner. So let me understand, I said slowly. You're cutting me off financially because my career doesn't impress you enough? We're reallocating family resources toward ventures with proven returns, my father replied, the investment banker in him overtaking the parent. James and Madison have demonstrated sound judgment and proper ambition, my mother added, while you have demonstrated neither. Just as I opened my mouth to respond, my phone began to vibrate in my purse. I ignored it, focusing on the conversation. You've never once asked about what I actually do, I said, not in any meaningful way. You decided years ago that my work wasn't valuable because it didn't fit your narrow definition of success. My phone buzzed again. And again, multiple calls in succession. Alicia's emergency signal. That's not true, my mother protested weakly. We've always supported your independence. Supported, I repeated incredulously. You've belittled my choices at every turn. You didn't even attend my college graduation, with isn't Harvard. Madison muttered. As if that explained everything. My phone continued its insistent vibration for calls now. Perhaps you should answer that, Aunt Patricia suggested quietly. It seems urgent. I hesitated, then reached for my purse as my father sighed dramatically at the breach of dinner etiquette. Excuse me, I said, pulling out my phone to see Alicia's name flashing on the screen. I need to take this. Of course, my father said sarcastically. The little startup emergency can't wait until after family dinner. I stood and answered the call, stepping slightly back from the table but remaining in the dining room. Alicia, what's happening? What happened next would replay in my mind for months. Miss Kara, Alicia's voice came through, clearly enough for everyone at the table to hear. I've been trying to reach you. SoftBank just confirmed they're in for $40 million. The valuation is official. We've hit $100 million pre-IPO. The Goldman team is popping champagne. The silence at the table was absolute. That's incredible news, I managed, watching my family's expressions transform from dismissal to confusion. Can you run through the details? As Alicia enthusiastically outlined the investment terms, stock options, and upcoming media announcements, I watched understanding dawn across each family member's face. My mother's wine glass froze halfway. To her lips, my father's perpetual frown deepened into something closer to bewilderment. Madison's mouth literally hung open. The Forbes interview is confirmed for Monday. Alicia continued, oblivious to the drama unfolding on my end. They're featuring you in their Billionaires in the Making series. Oh, and the Hospital Association wants you to give the keynote at their annual conference. The CEO called personally. Thank you, Alicia, I said when she finally paused for breath. This is wonderful news. Let's schedule a team meeting for tomorrow morning to discuss next steps. I ended the call and slowly returned to my seat. The silence stretched uncomfortably until Aunt Patricia began to laugh. A genuine, delighted sound that cut through the tension. Well, she said, raising her wine glass, I believe congratulations are in order. The tableau before me was almost worth the years of dismissal. 5 frozen faces in various states of shock and disbelief. My mother recovered first, her social training kicking in automatically. Kara, darling, she said, her voice honey-sweet in a way it had never been when addressing me. What wonderful news. Why didn't you tell us about your business success? My father's face had transformed from confusion to calculation. I could practically see him reassessing my value in real time. 100 million, he repeated slowly. In valuation for your healthcare application, Secure Health, I supplied. The name they had never bothered to learn. Yes, we're preparing for our initial public offering, led by Goldman Sachs. I couldn't resist adding, your firm. Dad, James looked like he'd been slapped. You're working with Goldman? With which team? Marcus Steinberg's group, I replied, naming one of the most prestigious partners and my father's contemporary. He's been incredibly supportive. Marcus is handling your IPO personally. My father's voice had lost its patronizing edge, replaced by something that sounded almost like respect. He hasn't led a healthcare offering in years. He made an exception, I said simply. He believes in what we're building. Madison, never one to stay quiet for long, jumped in with forced enthusiasm. This is amazing, Kara. I always knew you were smart with all that computer stuff. The transparent attempt to rewrite history might have been amusing if it weren't so insulting. Did you? I asked mildly. That's not how I remember it. My phone buzzed again, a text this time. I glanced down to see a message from Alicia. Wall Street Journal wants exclusive comment on SoftBank deal. Deadline in 3 hours. Also, your photo shoot for Forbes is confirmed for Tuesday. I looked up to find my mother studying me with new eyes. Is that a Cartier watch? She asked, noticing my wrist for the first time that evening. The rose gold tank watch had been my gift to myself when we secured Series B funding. Yes, I confirmed, last year's model. And your dress, she continued, reassessing the simple black design she had dismissed earlier. That's not Banana Republic, is it? Celine, I admitted. I dressed down for family dinners. The implications of this statement, that I had been deliberately hiding my success and wealth from them, hung in the air. My father cleared his throat. Businessman mode fully engaged now, Kara. Clearly we've had a misunderstanding about your professional situation. Perhaps we should revisit our earlier discussion about cutting me off. I asked bluntly. He winced at my directness. About the family financial arrangements. Obviously, circumstances have changed. Have they? I asked. My circumstances haven't changed in the last 15 minutes. I'm exactly the same person with exactly the same career that you were deeming unworthy of family support. Don't be difficult. Dear, my mother interjected, your father is trying to fix a simple misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding, I replied. You made yourselves perfectly clear. My choices don't align with Mitchell family values. My career isn't prestigious enough. I'm not contributing to the family legacy. James, ever the strategist, shifted to damage control. We were concerned because you seemed to be struggling, he offered. You never mentioned any of this success. I wonder why, Aunt Patricia murmured into her wine glass. How much are you worth? Madison asked bluntly, always focused on the bottom line. I regarded her thoughtfully. Secure Health is valued at $100 million pre-IPO. I own 51% of the company. A quick calculation silenced the table again. That's over $50 million, my father said carefully. On paper currently, I confirmed, the IPO is expected to double that at minimum, and we have international expansion beginning next quarter. My mother reached across the table to grasp my hand, a gesture so unfamiliar it took me by surprise. Sweetheart, this is wonderful news. We need to celebrate properly. I'll call the club tomorrow, arrange a special dinner. That won't be necessary, I interrupted, gently withdrawing my hand. Nonsense, this is a major achievement for the family, she insisted. We should mark the occasion appropriately. For the family, I repeated. A moment ago, I wasn't Mitchell enough to qualify for family resources. Now my achievement belonged to the family. My father shifted uncomfortably. Kara, perhaps we were hasty earlier. Family decisions should be made with complete information. You had the information you valued, I pointed out. You knew I was working in healthcare technology. You knew I had founded a company. You simply decided those facts weren't important because they didn't fit your predefined notion of success. Well, James interjected. Startup valuations can be quite speculative. It was reasonable to be concerned about stability. Was it concern, I asked, or judgment? Madison, never one for subtlety. Change tactics entirely? This is so exciting, Kara. With your tech expertise and Brian's political connections, we could create amazing synergies. He's been looking for innovative healthcare platforms to champion in his campaign. The transparent attempt to leverage my success for her fiancé's political ambitions was breathtaking in its audacity, and Dad, she continued eagerly. Imagine the investment opportunities for the family fund. Getting in before the IPO would be incredibly advantageous, my father nodded, already calculating potential returns. We should discuss how to structure the family's investment position. I could call Marcus tomorrow. Stop, I said quietly but firmly. Just stop, they all turned to me with varying expressions of confusion. I'm not looking for family investment, I stated clearly. Secure Health has all the funding it needs. But surely a pre-IPO family position would be beneficial, my father began. No, I cut him off. It wouldn't. Our cap table is set. What about board positions? James suggested. A Mitchell presence would lend credibility. Our board is also complete, I interrupted, with members who have believed in the company from the beginning. My mother looked genuinely bewildered. But, darling, now that we understand the situation, we want to support you properly. Now that you know I'm rich, I corrected her gently. That's different from support. Aunt Patricia coughed discreetly to hide her smile. That's not fair, Madison protested. We're family. Family supports each other's success. Does it? I asked. Where was that sentiment an hour ago? My father, ever the pragmatist, tried a different approach. The past is the past, Kara. Let's focus on moving forward. The Mitchell network can open doors for your company that would otherwise remain closed. I regarded him thoughtfully. What doors do you think remain closed to a $100 million company with Goldman Sachs as its IPO underwriter? He had no answer for that. I appreciate the sudden interest in my career, I said, standing up, but I think I'll be leaving now. I have an early meeting tomorrow. You're leaving? My mother looked alarmed. But we haven't even had dessert. We need to discuss your media strategy, your investment planning. Your father has excellent connections for wealth management. I have financial advisors, I said, picking up my purse, and APR team, and lawyers and every other professional service I need. But we're your family, she insisted. As if that trumped all other considerations, I looked at her sadly. Yes, you are. Which is why I kept coming to these dinners, year after year. Despite knowing exactly what to expect, despite knowing that nothing I achieved would ever be enough, my father stood as well. His expression serious. Kara, don't be hasty. Family relationships are more important than momentary disagreements. I agree, I said. Which is why I'm going to take some time to think about what kind of relationship I want with this family movie. Forward, I turned to Aunt Patricia, who was watching the scene with a mixture of pride and sadness. Would you like a ride home? She gathered her things immediately. I would love one. As we headed toward the door, my phone buzzed with another text. I glanced down to see Alicia's message. Financial Times wants to feature you as Healthcare Innovator of the Year. Need confirmation by tomorrow, Madison? Never one to admit defeat, called after me, Kara. We're hosting a dinner party next weekend for Brian's political supporters. It would be wonderful if you could attend and discuss healthcare innovation. I paused at the door and turned back to the table, taking in the scene one last time. The opulent dining room, the expensive wine, and the family that had never seen me until I became valuable to them. I'll check my schedule, I said politely, but I should warn you, my speaking fee for political events starts at $50,000. With that, Aunt Patricia and I walked out into the cool evening air, leaving the Mitchell family legacy to digest the fact that its greatest current success was the daughter they had just disowned. The drive from Brookline to Aunt Patricia's Cambridge apartment was quiet at first, the weight of the evening's events hanging between us, until she finally broke the silence with a soft chuckle. $50,000 for a speaking fee, she mused. Your mother nearly swallowed her pearl necklace. I couldn't help but laugh. I don't actually charge for speaking, but for Madison's fiancé? Oh, I'd charge him double, Patricia said with a wink. Self-important young man. We pulled up to her brownstone, but neither of us moved to exit the car. You knew, didn't you? I asked. About Secure Health, Patricia smiled. I read the technology section of the Times. Dear, your company was featured 3 months ago. I was waiting for you to share when you were ready. I should have told you, I admitted. I just got used to keeping it separate from family. For good reason, she said, patting my hand. Your father and I grew up with the same message. Success is measured by the right schools, the right clubs, the right investments. It took me until my 40s to break free of that mindset. You've done it in your 20s. I haven't exactly broken free, I said. I still showed up for dinner, still craved their approval on some level. That's being human, not being weak, she corrected gently. We all want our parents' love. The difference is, you didn't compromise your authentic self to get it. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment before she spoke again. What will you do now? About the family. I considered the question carefully. Set boundaries, clear ones. I won't participate in the suddenly interested routine, but I won't cut them off entirely either. Wise, she nodded, and Secure Health, now that the secret's out, continue as planned, I said. The IPO is moving forward. The work matters too much to let family drama affect it, Patricia leaned over to hug me before getting out. I always knew you'd do something extraordinary, Kara. Not because you're a Mitchell, but because you're you. Those words stayed with me during the drive to my South Boston loft, a converted warehouse space with exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. As I kicked off my heels and poured a glass of wine, my phone lit up with a barrage of notifications. A text from my father: we should discuss investment strategies for your new position. Lunch tomorrow at the club. An email from my mother: darling, I've added you to the guest list for the Symphony Gala next month. The chairman would love to discuss a potential donation from your company. A message from James: impressive move. Sis, let's grab coffee. Would love to hear more about healthcare tech sector opportunities. And most transparently, from Madison: Brian would love your input on his healthcare platform. Also, would Secure Health consider a donation to his campaign? PS. Can I introduce you to my friend Thomas? Harvard Med, family money, very eligible. I set my phone aside without responding and instead called Alicia. I'm so sorry, she said immediately. I had no idea you were at a family dinner. I should have been more discreet. Don't apologize, I interrupted. Your timing was actually perfect. Really? She sounded relieved. So they took the news well. They took it exactly as I expected, I replied. Suddenly, my computer hobby is fascinating, and I'm being added to guest lists I've never qualified for before. Ouch, Alicia said sympathetically. What are you going to do? Focus on what matters, I said decisively. We have an IPO to prepare for, hospital systems to support, and actual lives to improve. Family politics can wait. Speaking of which, Alicia transitioned to business mode. The team wants to celebrate the SoftBank news. Breakfast meeting at 8 o'clock. Perfect, I agreed. Oh, and Alicia, order the good champagne. The team deserves it. After hanging up, I walked to my window and gazed out at the Boston skyline. For years, I'd lived in two worlds, the struggling daughter at family dinners and the successful CEO in boardrooms. Now those worlds had collided, and I needed to establish how they would coexist going forward. The next morning, I arrived at Secure Health's Kendall Square offices to find the team already gathered in our glass-walled conference room. 35 faces looked up expectantly, developers, designers, healthcare specialists, and administrative staff who had believed in the vision when few others did. Before we popped the champagne, I said, setting down my bag, I want to thank each of you. What we've built isn't just valuable in market terms, it's valuable because it matters, every day. Patients connect with specialists who can help them because of what we've created together. Alicia handed me a flute of champagne and raised her own. To secure health, she toasted, and to Kara, who saw what healthcare could be when everyone else was stuck on what it was. After the celebration, I retreated to my office to find a delivery waiting, an elaborate flower arrangement the size of a small tree, with a card from my mother, so proud of our brilliant daughter. Love, Mom and Dad. I stared at the card, struck by the absurdity of it. 24 hours earlier, they were cutting me off from the family finances. Now I was their brilliant daughter. As I contemplated what to do with the flowers, my assistant popped her head in. Your father's called 3 times, she informed me. And your brother's in the lobby. James is here, I asked. Surprised, says he was in the neighborhood. She replied with air quotes. Should I send him up? After a moment's consideration, I nodded. Give me 5 minutes, then show him in. When James entered my office, his expression was a mixture of awkwardness and calculation. He whistled low as he took in the space. The floor-to-ceiling windows, the modern furniture, the framed Wall Street Journal article about secure health. Nice setup, he commented, hands in the pockets of his bespoke suit. Very. Tech startup chic. What brings you to Kendall Square, James? I asked, not offering him a seat. Dad's office is downtown. Can't a brother visit his successful sister? He asked with a forced smile. Of course, I replied. Though you've never done so before. He had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. Look, Kara. About last night, let me stop you there, I interrupted. If you're here with investment proposals or partnership ideas, I'm not interested. That's a bit harsh. He frowned. We're family. Yes, we are, I agreed. Which is why I'll have lunch with you someday, talk about neutral topics. Even attend family holidays. But secure health is off limits for family involvement, that's not. Very business savvy, he argued. The Mitchell connections could. The Mitchell connections haven't been offered to me for the past 4 years while I built this company, I pointed out. I'm not interested in them now. That's because we didn't know. You didn't ask, I corrected him. There's a difference. He shifted uncomfortably, then tried another approach. Dad feels terrible about last night, the cutting off thing. It was meant to motivate you. We had no idea you were already successful. And if I wasn't? I asked. If I was exactly who you thought I was, a mid-level employee at a struggling startup, would cutting me off still have been appropriate? He had no answer for that. James, I have a meeting in 10 minutes with actual investors who believed in this company before knowing its valuation. So unless there's something else. He straightened, businessman mask sliding back into place. Right, well, I'll tell Dad you're busy. Maybe dinner next week. He wants to make things right. Tell him I'll call when I'm ready, I said firmly. And James, the next time you're genuinely interested in what I do, I'd be happy to explain it. But only if you really want to know. After he left, I instructed my assistant to send the flower arrangement to the children's ward at Massachusetts General Hospital. Then I turned my attention back to the work that mattered, finalizing our IPO paperwork, reviewing our international expansion plans, and preparing for the Forbes interview. In the weeks that followed, I maintained my distance from family efforts to ingratiate themselves. My mother's calls went to voicemail, my father's lunch invitations received polite but firm declinations. Madison's transparent attempts to leverage my success for her fiancé's campaign were met with silence. The only family relationship I nurtured was with Aunt Patricia, who came to the office one afternoon for a proper tour. This is extraordinary, she said, watching our engineers demo the platform. You've built something that helps people. That was always the goal, I told her. The valuation is nice, but it's not the point. Which is exactly why you've succeeded where others have failed, she observed wisely. You solved a real problem instead of chasing the money. As we walked through the office, employees greeted me with genuine respect, not the deference born of fear that I'd observed at my father's firm, but the authentic appreciation of a team with shared purpose. You've created a family here, Patricia noted as we returned to my office, a chosen one. Looking around at the vibrant, purposeful energy of secure health, I realized she was right. While searching for approval from my biological family, I'd built a community of people who valued contribution over pedigree, innovation over tradition, and purpose over prestige. That realization was more valuable than any IPO valuation could ever be. 6 months passed in a whirlwind of activity. Secure Health's IPO exceeded all projections, valuing the company at $220 million on the first day of trading. My paper worth surpassed $112 million. More than the combined net worth of my entire extended family. The financial milestone made headlines, but it was our impact metrics that gave me true satisfaction. 450 hospitals now used our platform, connecting over 30,000 patients daily with specialists who could help them. Average wait times for critical consultations had dropped from weeks to days, sometimes hours. Lives were being improved, even saved, because of technology we had built. The media attention was intense. Forbes, Wall Street Journal, CNBC, all wanting the story of the healthcare tech wonderkind. I gave interviews, focusing on the technology and its impact, deliberately avoiding personal questions about family influence or connections. My first major decision post-IPO was establishing the Mitchell Innovation Foundation, a $20 million fund dedicated to supporting young women in technology, particularly those focused on healthcare solutions. The name was deliberate. I was reclaiming the Mitchell legacy on my own terms. The foundation's first initiative was a scholarship program for girls from underprivileged backgrounds to attend coding camps and receive mentorship from women in tech leadership. When reporters asked if the foundation was named after my family, I would simply reply, "It's named after me." My relationship with my family evolved into something more measured and controlled. I attended Christmas at the family estate but limited my stay to 3 hours and brought Alicia as my buffer. I accepted occasional lunches with my father, where conversation remained carefully centered on neutral topics like Boston weather and Red Sox prospects. My mother's attempts to showcase me at society events received polite but firm declinations, except for the Children's Hospital benefit, where Secure Health was a major donor. Madison's wedding invitation was accepted with the RSVP note that I would attend solo and would be leaving after the ceremony due to prior commitments. The only family relationship that deepened was with Aunt Patricia. She joined the board of the Mitchell Innovation Foundation, bringing her academic expertise and feminist perspective to our grant-making decisions. We had dinner weekly, and she became a trusted sounding board for both personal and professional challenges. "You've handled them perfectly," she told me over dinner one evening. Respectful but boundaried. "It's still hard sometimes," I admitted. "Part of me wishes they could genuinely understand and value what I've built. Not just its monetary worth. That may never happen," she said gently. "Your success exists in a framework they don't fully comprehend. They understand the numbers, but not the vision behind them." She was right, of course. My parents' attempts at reconciliation were always framed in terms they understood. Invitations to join exclusive clubs, introductions to appropriate potential partners, suggestions about wealth management, never conversations about what Secure Health actually did or why it mattered to me. My father's most sincere attempt came 3 months after the IPO, when he asked to tour our offices. I agreed, curious about what he would see. "Very impressive operation," he commented afterward, clearly surprised by the sophistication of our setup. "Not at all what I imagined." "What did you imagine?" I asked. He hesitated. "Something smaller, less significant." It was as close to an admission of misjudgment as Thomas Mitchell would ever come. "You've proven me wrong," he added after a moment. "That doesn't happen often." "It wasn't about proving anyone wrong, Dad," I replied. "It was about building something that mattered." He nodded slowly, not quite understanding but trying. It was a small step but a genuine one. The most unexpected development came through therapy, something I began shortly after the IPO at Aunt Patricia's suggestion. Dr. Levine specialized in family dynamics and helped me recognize that my drive for success had been partially fueled by a desire for validation I might never receive. "What would it mean?" she asked in one session, "if you accepted that your parents may never fully understand or value your choices the way you want them to?" The question was painful but clarifying. My success had proven them wrong but hadn't fundamentally changed them. True healing would come not from winning their approval but from no longer needing it. That realization freed me to build relationships based on authentic connection rather than history or obligation. I developed deep friendships with other founders who understood the entrepreneurial journey. I mentored young women in tech who reminded me of my younger self, hungry for guidance that I had never received. Most meaningfully, I began speaking at high schools in underserved Boston neighborhoods about careers in technology, trying to be the voice I had needed as a teenager. At one such event, a 15-year-old girl with bright eyes and a determined expression approached me afterward. "My parents want me to be a doctor or a lawyer," she said. "They say computer science isn't for girls like me." "Did you ever feel that way?" "All the time," I told her honestly. "The most important thing I learned is that you get to define your own success, not your parents, not society, you." "But what if they never understand?" she asked, the real question behind her words. "Painfully familiar. Then you build a life so authentically yours that their understanding becomes secondary," I replied. "And you find people who do understand, mentors, friends, colleagues who see your vision and value your path." In that moment, speaking to a younger version of myself, I understood that my family's rejection had been painful but also formative. It had forced me to develop resilience, self-reliance, and conviction in my vision, qualities that ultimately contributed to Secure Health's success. The following week, I received a surprising call from my mother. "I saw your speech at the Girls in Tech conference," she said. "Someone shared it on Facebook." I waited, unsure where this was heading. "You're very good at it," she continued, "public speaking. You have a presence like your grandfather. He could command a room too." It was the first compliment she had ever given me that wasn't related to appearance or social graces. "Thank you," I said simply. "I don't understand what you do," she admitted after a pause. "The technology, the healthcare integration, it's beyond me. But I can see that it matters to you." And apparently to many others, it wasn't full understanding, but it was acknowledgement. The beginning of seeing me as I actually was rather than as she wished me to be. 1 year after the fateful family dinner, I hosted a different kind of gathering, a housewarming for my new Back Bay townhouse. The guest list included the original Secure Health team, fellow entrepreneurs, mentors who had supported me, and Patricia and, after consideration, my immediate family. As I looked around at the diverse group mingling in my living room, my chosen family alongside my biological one, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't expected. The Mitchell family dynamics hadn't fundamentally changed, but my relationship with them had. I no longer needed their validation to know my worth or my path. When the time came for a toast, I raised my glass and found my voice steady and clear. "To authentic success," I said, "not measured by bank accounts or social standing, but by the lives we touch and the problems we solve. To surrounding ourselves with people who believe in us before we're successful, not after, and to defining our own legacy, whatever our last name might be." Aunt Patricia caught my eye across the room and nodded proudly. My parents looked somewhat puzzled but respectfully attentive. And my colleagues and friends, the people who had believed in Secure Health's mission from the beginning, smiled with genuine understanding. That night, after everyone had left, I stood on my rooftop terrace overlooking the Boston skyline. My phone buzzed with a notification. Secure Health had just been approved for use in hospitals across the UK, our first major international expansion. Lives would be improved because of something I had built, something my family had once dismissed as a computer hobby. I thought about that 15-year-old girl and all the others like her, young women with dreams that didn't fit neatly into others' expectations. If my story could help them stand firm in their own vision, then being cut off at that family dinner was ultimately a gift. It had forced me to fully own my path rather than seeking external validation. Sometimes, the most painful rejections lead us to our greatest strengths. Sometimes, being cut off from what we think we need pushes us to discover what we actually require. And sometimes, the most powerful reply to "we're cutting you off" completely isn't an argument or a defense, it's building something so meaningful that it speaks for itself. Has your family ever dismissed your dreams or tried to push you down a path that wasn't right for you? How did you respond? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to define success on their own terms. Remember, the most powerful validation is the kind you give yourself. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you all find the courage to build a life authentically your own.